When you're watching a live stream, you may spot some characters at the bottom of the screen. These are stream avatars, little characters that each represent a Twitch viewer, which they can customize to make them feel more like them. I love the idea of having something like that for my own stream with Fern and her buds. This led me to learn a lot about how to make character sprite sheets, and so today I'm going to be taking you through the process and the lessons learned from making my own stream avatars. And if you haven't met me before, hey, my name is Jade, and I like to paint with pixels. So, what is a sprite sheet? A sprite sheet is an image containing a grid of smaller images, usually used in game dev for storing animations for characters or tiles for environments in a more efficient way than individual files. To start, we're going to be making the base character, which we can then add different character heads and accessories on top of. As usual, we will be drawing our sprite sheets in Pixsquare on the iPad. The base size of your sprite is entirely up to you. Here are a few examples of video game characters at different sizes. The bigger your sprite is, the more detail you can add to your character, but the downside is it becomes a lot more time consuming to add more customizable elements and to animate them at bigger sizes. Since I do want to make it very customizable and to not overwhelm myself, I tried to find a happy medium. The base of my character comfortably fits in a 32 by 40 pixel canvas, with a bit of room on the sides and the top in case my accessories or animations need a bit of extra room. This is also the canvas size I'm going to use to help me preview the animations while I'm working on them, and then we'll copy them to the sprite sheet later. When I was happy with the base, I started to animate the 5 preset actions which every character in Stream Avatars has by default, which are an idle, run, sit, stand, and jump. For most actions or states, I kept the animation to only 1 or 2 frames, whereas the run state is the most complicated with 6 frames. I tried to make sure that the last frame in the state smoothly transitioned into the first frame so that the animation would loop smoothly. Once I was happy with my animations, I copied them over to a bigger canvas, which will be our sprite sheet. This is set to a size of an individual frame multiplied to fit each animation on 1 row. So for now, for my characters, I made the canvas that is 6 frames wide and 5 frames tall, which is 192 by 200 pixels. There are some formatting rules specifically for Stream Avatar sprite sheets. The character needs to always be facing to the right, and the first 5 rows of the sprite sheet are for the preset actions that we just made, and the 5 rows after that are for custom animations. For custom animations, I knew I wanted to have a couple custom commands that built on the sit down command. I thought, since we draw a lot on stream, why not have our little characters bring out a notebook and draw alongside us? Or maybe they need a little break with some snacks. Or maybe the viewer is doing some crafting and they can knit while they have the stream on in the background. I made each of these animations in a separate file and then copied them into a new row once they were done. Now we have the most exciting part, adding in the customization. While I'm drawing a few of the characters and accessories, here are some things to keep in mind, especially in the early stages, because they will have a knock-on effect if you change them later on. If you want to add a lot of customization, be mindful of how many frames of animation you make for each state. I touched on this topic earlier, but it's especially important for adding accessories as well. More frames will require more work for every accessory that you add. If you wanted to add a new animation or state after you've already made a few accessories and avatars, you then have to go back and add in the extra frames for each new row. Which is what happened to me when adding my custom animations. Now you're not just drawing an accessory once or twice, you're suddenly drawing and adjusting it for, in my case, 29 frames of animation for that one accessory. Some of these you might just need to copy and paste across frames or move slightly, but the work definitely adds up. So where possible, make sure you have a good idea of what animations you have as your base before you start adding in your customization. Another thing to check is, do you want your character to be able to hold items as accessories? I did not think about this before I made my base, and now it's sort of impossible to have my little characters hold some items like a mug of coffee, or tea in my case, based on how they walk and where their arms move in the animation. Ooh. I have about 50 accessories and 12 characters already made, so it's a bit too late for me to make adjustments to the base to accommodate for holding items like this. So make sure that you trial out a couple of items that you'd like your characters to hold or wear in different ways before sticking with your base. There's a setting in Stream Avatars to flip your accessory if the avatar turns around, which is great when it's symmetrical, but any text or symbols, or in my case numbers, will be also flipped in that process. So the balloons that I had planned for my 5-year anniversary on Twitch didn't quite work out. I ended up using more symmetrical shapes, such as the heart and the star for the balloons, but it's something to definitely keep in mind when you are designing your accessories. Something you also have to be mindful of when adding accessories is how they'll look on all of your avatars. This is a lot easier if you aren't making major changes to the base character, but with my characters, the ears and the eyes can sometimes be placed in different places, even on the same silhouette. Take for example my bear character Fern and Lily, my frog character. I would have loved to have a mushroom hat be this huge hat that covers their entire head, but this would not work with some of my avatars because that would completely cover their eyes. Sorry, Lily. So I found in a lot of situations, making the object be really small and just fit within this area of the character's head works the best. This definitely restricted how much detail I could add, but I actually don't mind it, because it just meant that all of the objects ended up being really cute. Like, look at this little mushie. What's nice is that as you create more items for your characters, you start to learn what works best and can experiment a bit more. Now I start to add a bit more sway to items as they walk so that they'll feel a bit more 3D, like these scarves. These are a lot of fun to create, especially the blanket, which is a lot more involved, but I think it's one of my favorites. Like this. This is how I want to be for the rest of the year. Just a little burrito, eating, drawing, doing my little crafts. That is all I want. Uploading your sprite sheets to stream avatars is pretty straightforward. There are a lot of great tutorials already up on YouTube, so I shall link a couple that I use down below. With a couple of adjustments, here is the final result. Despite some of the mistakes I made, I really love how these turned out. The backstory of Fern and the gang is that they're meant to be these little spirit desk buddies to keep you company while you work, so they felt like the perfect fit to become my stream avatars for Twitch. It's one of my favorite parts of streaming now, seeing how everyone expresses themselves with the customization options, and gets excited when we add new accessories like the blanket or the pumpkin outfit, so I'm really glad I took the time to set this up. If you have any suggestions for accessories to add, let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're curious of how I make pixel art animations, check out this video here where I go through the process of making a Twitch alert animation step by step. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Take care out there. Goodbye!